Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, what's going on there, sir?
Happy spring. And also happy March Madness too.
And
We're
it's some madness going, isn't it? It's
yeah,
a,
it's insane.
so I'm sure a lot of disappointment there. Maybe not so much in your neck of the woods, but a lot of disappointment with Ohio State getting bumped by Oral Roberts. I mean, it's got to be a big. I mean, because Ohio State, number 2 seed, really good team. What was the feeling like there in Ohio, seeing them go down?
I think it was a bit of a shocker. Kind of like what you said. I don't think as many people here in Cleveland have that close connection. But also, this is only the ninth 15 seed ever to advance on to the next round.
Yeah,
So props to them. Like props to Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts a very like Christian college too.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. Yeah, well, I imagine in overall in Columbus, it's probably not. They're probably a lot more upset. But
Yeah.
on, on the other hand, we had Ohio U, who you never really hear anything about,
Nah.
knocking off the defending champs, Virginia. And Virginia actually still had a really good team. What are some thoughts out there about that huge upset?
I did see that there was a lot of people like on the campus and around the campus celebrating. So I think there's a lot more excitement, honestly, about Ohio University as opposed to Ohio State losing. Um, but I think also it's just a very exciting atmosphere and people are, I don't know. I think it's very interesting to see how everything's kind of turned out. It's odd the way that like all of the like it's all in Indiana. It still seems slightly weird. And then the no contest one yesterday kind of felt a little bizarre. But overall, like I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, I mean, me too. This is still probably the event of the year. Super Bowl is just one day. This spans a few weeks, and it's just it's hard to match the excitement. I miss the crowds. There's some fans there, and it is odd that it's all. I love how they used to say, "Hey, let's take you now out to Provo, Utah, or to Dayton, Ohio." You know what I mean? Where it would be all over the country. It seemed like the whole country had a little part in it, but I think they're trying to do it safely. But let's do that VCU Oregon, and let's do a little tie-in here because VCU has spent several years before as kind of being the darling of the big dance here, as they with a great coach Shaka Smart. Certainly, it was them that had the COVID outbreak, but Shaka Smart now over at Texas, and we have another Christian school, Abilene Christian, that upsets number 3 Texas. What was some of your thoughts on that?
I saw a little bit of that one unfold and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's insane. And I think also, yeah, like the weird tie-ins to me is very interesting. But also, like, I don't know. I'll ask your opinion on this as well. Does it seem like there's more upsets this year? Speaking of which, right now, Loyola Chicago is leading Illinois by 8, kind of
I
in midway
know
through the second half.
I'm seeing that
Like,
trickle in. Yeah,
I don't know. It seems like there's more, and I love it. Like, I love seeing like the upsets, like the one you just talked about. What is it? Albeit Christian, or I don't know if I'm
Abilene
pronouncing that
Christian.
right.
Yeah,
Abilene
yeah,
Christian.
yeah,
Um, and then also kind of the I'm just looking at the bracket here to get all of them, like Ohio University, um, North Texas, uh, Oregon State beating Tennessee, Syracuse,
yeah,
not a huge upset, 11 beating San Diego State. Um, it seems like there was a lot of upsets. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah. It seems like every year there is. It's rare. I think it's only been one time in history, right, that there were 4 number 1 seeds that went to the Final Four, and that
Yeah,
wasn't too long ago. I don't remember the year, but it wasn't that long ago. It seems like almost every year you get to hear about these colleges that you never heard of or would never be on TV, and they rise up, and there's just something in them that I love. The I can't wait till they play One Shining Moment. I doubt if I stay up that late, um, but it's the One Shining Moment. Just the words in that song and the song itself just captures these couple of weeks because you just see these teams like Abilene Christian. Really, I mean, who they beat Texas with Shaka Smart as the coach. I mean, it was Shaka Smart who was doing that to other big teams a few years ago at VCU.
Yeah.
I think it's about on par. It almost seems like every year, that you see these upsets, or a number two goes down before they get to the Sweet 16, a number one goes down before they get to the Sweet 16. I mean, well, let me ask you this. This is one of the few years, though, we don't see this often, where we have a team that's a big time team that's undefeated going into the tournament. Now, this has been a weird year, but what do you think about Gonzaga? They came out strong yesterday, obviously, but can they run the table? What do you think?
I think they've got a shot because right now they would face either, should they win, let me just preface that, they would face either Creighton or Ohio. And usually, like at that point, like especially like if Ohio University pulls off the upset tomorrow, like more than likely, it seems like those teams that make the Sweet 16, like the double-digit seeds, usually kind of falter after that. I think they have a shot, especially at the Final Four, but especially if they go against, say, like a team like Baylor in the finals, it might be a little harder to do that.
I'm sure there's going to be one or two surprise teams that get to the Final Four, but I have to tell you, Baylor, I would be stunned if Baylor and Gonzaga lost before they got to the Final Four. Those two teams just seem to be head shoulders above the rest. So does Michigan, seem to be really, really big, are really good. So, but I like Baylor and Gonzaga. I just think that I think there's probably about 4 or 5 really good NBA players on both those teams, And by the way, Loyola is up by 13 now. So we might see our first number one go down. Looks like they're halfway through. A lot of time left. They're halfway through the second half, about 10 minutes left. So,
wow.
Yeah. Listen, I love it. We're going to talk more NCAA tournament. We're going to do a little nostalgic thing in just a little bit. Let's go around the horn a little bit. Let's start with football, which we haven't spoken much about, but it was free agency period. And the reason why I really wanted to speak about it is because you had to be grinning from ear to ear because this is one of those, I probably know maybe 2 players on the Detroit Lions. It was probably Stafford, who's not there anymore, obviously, and this guy. So your team pulled off a huge signing. Talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, Kenny Galladay, Kenny G. I saw someone made a shirt of him with the Giants now.
Yeah.
I think it's a good replacement because they had just released Golden Tate a couple weeks ago. I think it's a good replacement for him. And it seems like now that they actually, like Daniel Jones, I've still been a little skeptical about him, but I feel like he's started to take strides forward. He's going to have Saquon Barkley back this year. And it looks like he has a pretty decent amount of weapons. I would say this is probably kind of a do or die year for him. But also the Giants don't really have a backup plan in case he doesn't work out. But I love the signing. I think it seems like it's a really good boost because I feel like their wide receiving core since they traded Odell has not been that great. And I think this is a year that we can see what Daniel Jones is actually made of. He's going to have an elite running game. Hopefully Barkley comes back healthy and ready to continue to dominate. And he'll have really good receivers. He has a pretty decent offensive line, and he's got a good coach. So, like, really at this point, it's like, we'll see what we got in our quarterback. I think it's going to be a good signing. I saw that he led the league in touchdown receptions, not last year, but the year before, 2019. So we'll see. I'm excited about the signing, especially with like the NFC East. Washington could have taken a huge step forward by signing a really good quarterback. They settled for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Dak and the Cowboys, I'm still not sure about them. the Eagles seem like they're a giant mess right now. So right now, like the Giants have that opportunity to kind of take that next step. They were the last team eliminated last year. So who knows what's
Yeah.
going to happen?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited that they spent some money, which is good. And most of the NFL teams tend to use a lot of their cap, which I think they should. Except the Jets. For some reason, the Jets for several years um, chose not to. But listen, you compared him to Golden Tate. I think that's a good comparison. But at this point in his career, Golden Tate's point in his career, he's way better. He's, Golden State 5-6 years ago was an excellent receiver. Was probably in that second tier of receivers. This guy's close to that first tier. I think, again, he's so. And I just remember, from the one or two times that the Lions were on TV, I was like, this guy is good, man. I think Thanksgiving Day, and they might have had one other game. And so yeah, I think that I agree. Listen, I like Daniel Jones. I like him better than Darnold. I think he's come a longer way. He still makes a mistake here and there, big mistake, but I think that's growing pains. But I think you're right. This is a pivotal year. The Giants have got him some weapons. And, I hated that the Giants, didn't they lose an offensive lineman? I thought they lost somebody off their offensive line, signed with somebody else. Maybe they didn't. But
I think they might have, yeah.
Yeah. But that's to me, it's just protecting him is the key. And I mean, I think Eli would have probably played another year or two had he had a good offensive line. I mean, he was just getting so beat up, So yeah. I think that's the key for the Giants. I think they'll score. I think with this offense, they'll definitely score. But I think as long as they protect Jones and he doesn't, I mean, he could run. He showed that, he had those couple of big runs last year. I think he had the longest one for a quarterback last year. But I'm excited at their prospects. I agree with you. I think their division is shaky at best. I don't think it improved all that much. I was surprised the Redskins. Sorry. I was surprised the Washington team did not make a move. I mean, I've always liked Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's not a franchise quarterback, But I was a little surprised. All right, so football's starting to shape up. I think there'll still be some. I could sense there's going to be still maybe one or two more big moves in football. Totally, not so much with the Giants. I think they're going to be pretty set with the team that they have, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the draft. Obviously, the Jets. I think they're probably going to make a big move. We'll see if Sam Darnold will still be here, but I still think that you've got some quarterbacks that'll move. I mean, if Russell Wilson gets traded somewhere, then that's going to be huge. But it looks like it won't be Chicago because it looks like they told Andy Dalton that the team is his, which that surprised me a little bit. But that means that they'll probably trade Trubisky or something like that, and maybe change the scenery is what he needs as well.
Yeah, Trubisky's a free agent, so they're just letting him walk. He's he signed with the Bills. Think about it.
Yeah. Let's jump to baseball, and I'm anxious to hear some of your thoughts now as we're in the home stretch here. I'll tell you that one of my favorite moments of the week, it's going to sound weird, but Carlos Carrasco, he tore his hamstring. And that's not, I hate that, that's not a favorite moment. But what he said is exactly the way I feel. And when I get anything now, he said, torn hamstring compared to what I've been through is nothing, and a lot of people may or may not know the cancer battle that he's fought and beaten. And so, I had really bad vertigo, as you know, over the summer. And I really looked at that as that could be pretty serious and debilitating at times. But I really looked at that as compared to what I've been through, man, nothing. This is nothing, So I really loved when he said that, and he spoke a little bit about God, how God brought him through, cancer, and that was probably my favorite Met moment, maybe overall sports moment of the week. It kind of went way under the radar. But let's turn to your. So I think, listen, I don't have much to say on my Mets. My fingers are crossed that they get some of these contracts done because Lindor looks like Lindor. And I'm really excited, even with Carrasco being out for a little bit. I'm really excited at this team. Edwin Diaz looks lights out, which he was very good last year. He wasn't great last year, but he was much better than his first year. I think this year he's gonna be how he was that last year in Seattle. So I'm fingers crossed for my Mets. I really don't want to say much. Let's see. I want to get to opening day and let's go. What about your Yankees? A lot of tough cuts they probably have to make. How are you feeling about their starting pitching right now?
I actually feel very excited about their starting pitching. Kind of with you, I don't want to say too much to jinx it, but like Taillon, Kluber have looked really healthy. Domingo Herman, who's had kind of a weird spring as it was, he's been lights out. Davy Garcia has also been really good. Jordan Montgomery threw 5 hitless innings on Wednesday. So
Wow.
he's looking like he's very sharp. Really, like, once again, to me, the biggest thing is their health. And knock on wood, so far, none of like the big guys have gotten hurt. Higashioka probably might or might not start the season. He's kind of been Cole's personal catcher, but Aaron Boone said right from the start that Gary Sanchez is getting opening day start. He's going to catch Garrett Cole. I'm okay with that, and I think that's fine. It also might say that Higashioka is not fully healthy. And their backup plan was Robinson Chirinos, and he broke his hand. So catching depth's a little bit of a concern, but like you had said, they do have a lot of interesting roster moves coming up. Because right now, like, take the starters out. The bench right now is probably Brett Gardner, whoever the backup catcher is, Tyler Wade potentially.
Right.
And then I would probably say Jay Bruce, but you could go with Derek Dietrich, who's looked decent. Mike Ford's already been sent down, so it's not going to be him. Mike Tauchman is,
okay.
Yeah. Mike Tauchman too doesn't have any options, so they could lose him if he's not on the roster. So that might be a little bit of an interesting roster crunch there. Jay Bruce has looked really good, and also being a lefty, I think he would get a lot of time, especially he hits a couple home runs. I would love to see John Sterling's call with Jay Bruce. But I don't know. I'm feeling kind of excited about this team. I'm a little nervous about the bullpen, but not that nervous because I feel like some of those guys can kind of plug in wherever they need to. Chad Green's been great. Jonathan Loizaga looks like he might take another step towards being kind of one of those setup guys. Guys like O'Day, Justin Wilson have been pretty solid. So like you, I'm just ready for opening day, and I'm hoping that we can get to opening day without any hiccups and injuries. Severino also has looked really good. He started throwing from a mound. They're like, wow, you seem like you're really ahead of time. So we'll see.
I think it's going to be a big year for the Yankees. Let me comment really quick on the 3X Mets there. Justin Wilson, first of all, he will be excellent for you. That was a loss for us. He did extremely well. He's clutch. He's tough. He's got a great splitter and not splitter, cutter. He throws kind of what Mariano used to do. Not nearly as good. No one will ever throw a cutter like him, but he's good. And Justin Wilson's a guy you could bring in, not just to get a lefty out. He's just good. He's good, solid. That was a great pickup. I'm sorry, Robinson Chirinos seems like a really, really nice guy, and he's a great defensive catcher. He can't hit a lick anymore. I don't know what happened to him. And it wasn't just when he came to the Mets. If you look at his stats from the last 3 years, he doesn't hit. And he used to hit 20 homers a year. He used to bat at least 260, 270 in his heyday with Texas and then with the Astros. But I don't know what happened to his hitting. And I have to tell you, it's a no-brainer for them to keep Jay Bruce for a couple of reasons. Jay Bruce could play first base. He could play both the corner outfield positions. He's New York tough. He's a veteran, and he's left-handed. He's a left-handed power hitter in Yankee Stadium. So, and the Yankees love those type of veterans that know their role, that'll come off the bench, and it's a no-brainer for them to keep him. And so I think Jay Bruce still has a couple of good years left in him in a role like this. Maybe not as a starter, but in a role like this, I think he'll do extremely well. So I think that's going to be an added element. I could see him hitting 15 homers off the bench, for the Yankees. And he's good, decent defensively in the outfield, and he taught himself to be really good around first base. So
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer. You give Luke Voigt a day off, or let him DH, and put Jay Bruce over there. You're not going to lose anything. So the Yankees, yeah, I really I'd be pumped up if I'm a Yankee fan, because I think that this is going to be a big year. I think that they're going to get a lot of wins against the Orioles. They're going to get a lot of wins against the Red Sox. So I think they'll load up in their division. And American League, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is not that strong like they were before. There's maybe a handful of very good teams in the American League. The rest are just okay. So I think the Yankees will blow through those. All right, so a lot more to come. Maybe next week we do our baseball preview and prediction, since it'll be a week from opening day. All right, let's shift over. You sent me an article this week. We'll shift back to the tournament, which they're still up by 10, by the way, with a little more than 4 minutes left.
Oh gosh.
Chicago. So we might have our first number one going down. You sent me an article about, and I want to get your take on this, because honestly, I don't really know the answer. You sent me an article about 10 players who had just phenomenal March Madness, and really overall really solid or great careers. And I chose 5 of them because I want to give a background on what they're doing now and accentuate the positive a little bit. But they had great college careers, not so much in the NBA. And we've seen that ever since I was a kid, and we've just seen that over and over again. On one hand, before I ask you the question, in your lifetime, we've also seen some great college players, and translate that right to the NBA. Carmelo Anthony comes to mind. I mean, 1 year in college, but he was great, won a championship. Derrick Rose, also only 1 year, but came, that close, forced overtime, was a great college player with Memphis. Grant Hill was phenomenal. Chris Paul, Tim Duncan. More recently, Kemba Walker was phenomenal with UConn, leading them to the championship. Steph Curry almost got his team to the Final Four, amazingly, with Davidson. And Gordon Hayward, Butler, those years, I mean, he was just phenomenal. And he's been much above average NBA player. So we've seen the opposite end of that. But Kenny, what's your opinion? Why is it that you see a lot of players, and I'm hoping we're not seeing one with Obi Toppin. Hopefully he'll grow. But how is it that we see a lot of great college players? Kevin Knox, unfortunately, another one. Great college players, and it doesn't translate to greatness in the NBA. I know it's another level up, but what would be 1 or 2 things you could pinpoint on why that happens a lot?
I think part of it is just like the upgrade of talent from college to the NBA. I feel like for some people, like, especially if you're in like one of these smaller schools, like you're not in like one of the major 5 conferences, and you're facing teams that are like lucky to be the 16 seed, and then like you just kind of go on this crazy run. You're like, well, I know college is so easy. So then like taking that uptick in talent, it kind of exposes you a little bit. I think part of it too is that some guys stop trying after college. I think some of these guys that we'll talk about, I feel like they were like, yeah, I was really good in college, and because I was so good in college, I know I'm going to be good in the NBA. And then they just kind of coast, and they don't take the time and effort to kind of go there.
Yeah, that's really, I had not thought of that. That is really interesting. Okay. Well, let's talk about 5 of them, right? So one you're probably a little young to remember. I remember you watched this game with me, but you were only 10. That would be Mateen Cleaves with Michigan State. It was really kind of the beginning of their run, and I know they lost this year, but they are always like either in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. I don't know how many Final Fours Tom Izzo has taken them to. It's been a lot. They've won the title a couple of times, but he was the MVP that year. He was the National College Player of the Year that year, and he led Michigan State, to the championship that year. And it's funny, the year before that, he hurt his ankle, and they played UConn, and I think that was the Richard Hamilton, Emeka Okafor team, and because his ankle was so bad, he barely played, and UConn won that game. But they came back the next year to take the championship. They beat North Carolina. in the championship game. And so he was the 14th pick overall by the Detroit Pistons, which would have been a nice story staying there in Michigan. But he was a total complete bust in the NBA. He was a point guard, and I thought he probably just wasn't quick enough and didn't really bring his game up to the NBA. But we're sports on a positive tip, right? So I do want to talk about what happens afterwards, right? Is their life become positive afterwards? So for Cleaves, it's a little bit of a mixed bag because he went on to become an analyst for Michigan State, as well as for Fox Sports Net. And they're probably going to bring him back to doing that. He also founded his own record label, which has been pretty successful. But the reason why I say they kind of bring him back in 2017, he was arrested for sexual assault. A lady accused him of sexual assault. And it got thrown out by one court, and they took it to like the Supreme Court in, I think this is in Michigan, in the state of Michigan. And then they put him through trial and everything. But he was recently acquitted, of that. So he totally denied the charges for these last 3-4 years. When I say recently, this was last week that he was actually acquitted. And so hopefully he's looking to get his job back with Fox Sports as well as go back as a radio analyst. But by all accounts, taking out of that, it's just hard to take that out. That's a big deal, right? But he got acquitted, so we'll go by what the law says. He's led a pretty productive life. It doesn't seem like not making it in the NBA bothered him. So that's Mateen Cleaves. Let's go to a guy that you remember, Adam Morrison. Let me give you some of the stats, and I want to hear your thoughts on him. So he was the National Player of the Year in 2006. And actually, he shared that with JJ Redick, who's still playing in the NBA. Rumor has it might be coming to the Knicks, but we'll see. And he also has 2 NBA championships, riding the bench with the Lakers for 2 years when they won the title with Kobe Bryant's last 2 titles. He was the 3rd pick for the Charlotte Hornets, the number 3 pick in the draft. And almost immediately, he was a total bust. Now, he was with Gonzaga, and they had some success in the tournament. That's when Gonzaga used to kind of upset a few people, and then they would lose. They lost to UCLA that year, 2006, in the Sweet 16. That UCLA team went on to the Final Four, so they were a really good team. But an interesting thing about him, and no, I never heard this before. When he was 13, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and he fights that every single day. So he really fought through that when he was playing in the NBA. But he was a guy I was really surprised that he wasn't successful in the NBA. And I'll tell you about the positive side in a second, but want to hear your thoughts because you remember clearly Adam Morrison.
Yeah. Side note. So 2006 draft, I just looked this up. You know who number 1 overall was that year?
I don't remember.
Our good boy, Andrea Bargnani.
Oh.
I am looking. It's not that wasn't really a good draft in general. Like I'll really quick name the top 10. Bargnani, LaMarcus Aldridge, Adam Morrison, Tyrus Thomas, Sheldon Williams, Brandon Roy, Randy Foy, Rudy Gay, Patrick O'Brien, Mohamed Sane. Not a good draft.
No. Oh, wow.
For him, I thought that he would be kind of the way that Steven Adams is for Oklahoma City. Like, kind of like that energetic guy, not really like that athletic, but like a guy that can really like energize the bench or energize the starting lineup, and then just like kind of be like the guy to help build like a different culture. And it just never really seemed like it worked out for him. Yeah. Like he was with Charlotte those couple of years, and then went with the Lakers, and then you just kind of never heard from him again.
Yeah. He averaged 28 points a game in his junior year. He skipped his senior year, but he averaged 28 points a game, and it was surprising to me that I agree. I thought he would have at least been a good 6-man, come off the bench, instant offense. It just never happened for him. Here's some good news though. So he made $17 million as an NBA player, and he saved and invested most of that. So he's very well off financially. And he's a single dad, has a son and daughter that he takes care of. And he spends most of his time just with them. And this past season, he started as a radio analyst for Gonzaga on their radio network. So it ended well. He said his NBA career doesn't bother him at all. It doesn't define him, which I like hearing that. All right, here's a guy that you remember, and actually he's still playing, but definitely not in the NBA. Jimmer Fredette. Man, oh man, that guy could shoot. And so he was with BYU, Brigham Young University. He's a pure scorer. So he led the nation in scoring his last year. He played all 4 years in college. His last year, he averaged 29 points a game, led the nation in scoring. His big thing that year, or the year before, well, no, it was in the regular season, late in the regular season. They're in the same conference as San Diego State. And I barely remember this because this is where he came into prominence. He scored like over 60 points in this game. And he was just firing up shots from all over the place, like Steph Curry, like almost from half court. But San Diego State that year was undefeated up until that point. It was the last game of the regular season. Do you remember who the big star on San Diego State was?
Kawhi Leonard.
There you go. Absolutely. Good job. Yeah. Kawhi Leonard was a very underrated college player. Because San Diego State, you didn't hear much about them. Although they had Steve Fisher all those years as their coach, who was a great coach at Michigan for a long time, and he kind of had a second career bringing them up. So they lost to Florida in the Sweet 16 that year. So he didn't get into the Elite Eight. They did get to the Sweet 16, but they upset a few teams. Now, he was the 10th overall pick by the Milwaukee Bucks. Total 100% bust in the NBA. He bounced around from team to team, even was with the Knicks for a little bit for a cup of coffee. But he's still playing. He's playing in China right now. And by all accounts, now in China, he's hitting like 40, 50 points a night. But by all accounts, he also doesn't seem bothered by his lack of an NBA career. He didn't make much money. So he's probably going to need to, go into a second career. I don't know how much he makes in China, but he's like their top player there. Now, he made a comeback in 2019 to the NBA with Phoenix. I think he was with them for about 10 or 12 games, and then they cut him, and Utah picked him up for a little bit, and then they cut him, which I would have thought BYU is in Utah. I would have thought that would have been a nice place for him to maybe make a comeback, but it just never materialized for him. Why do you suppose it never did? Give me your thoughts on Jimmer Fredette.
He's a very puzzling one for me because, especially now where the NBA is so 3-point oriented, it seemed like it would translate really well.
Yeah.
I'm looking up his stats here. In China, he averaged 37 points a game and then 36 points a game.
That's insane. He's like scoring like 40, 50 points randomly, a night. I think they said he had one game where he scored 70. I mean, and he's a jump shooter, so he's just firing up jump shots.
Yeah,
that's insane.
I don't know. I think he's a very interesting case because you can make the case for a guy like Adam Morrison, especially in the NBA now, where it's like everyone, including centers, are shooting threes. Like if you're not a shooter, you're not making it very far. But he was kind of ahead of that curve, and I would figure that given enough time, he would still kind of shine in that, but it seems like he never did. Also, I pulled up so he was 10th overall. Here are the guys. We'll go 6 after him. So Milwaukee could have had the following players: Klay Thompson, Alec Burks, who's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Markieff and Marcus Morris, who I didn't realize went back-to-back in the draft.
I didn't realize that either. Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard and Nikola Vucevic.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if the Bucks had Kawhi Leonard? I mean, oh my God. Klay Thompson. Oh, wow.
Well, and also that's the same draft that the Cavs went with Tristan Thompson instead of really any of those guys. Kemba Walker is also in that draft.
Wow.
Later on, Jimmy Butler is in
Wow.
there. So
It's hit or miss. I mean,
that one was
really.
a miss for Milwaukee. Because
Yeah.
imagine him with Giannis, like that would be insane.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Here's another name you remember. This is a little bit of a sad one. Greg Oden. And so number one overall pick with the Blazers, Ohio State. Who was the second pick that year?
Kevin Durant.
With Durant. But everyone was saying they should take the big man because he was special. I mean, remember he was like 19 years old, but he looked like he was 40. Like he had an older appearance, but I mean, he had it all. He was so good. He got them all the way to the championship game. Ohio State, they lost to Florida, and that was the Al Horford, Joakim Noah team that they lost to. Played 6 years off and on, mostly off in the NBA before he finally gave it up. Now his story hopefully ends well, but he struggled. He struggled with depression for not being successful for all of his injuries. Because I think he wasn't successful because of his injuries. I have to think that if Greg Oden was healthy, he would have been a pretty good player because the flashes of him healthy was good. He was playing well in the NBA, but he struggled with alcohol, struggled with depression, and he got into trouble. Apparently, he hit his ex-girlfriend, and she declined to press charges, so they only put him on probation. He never denied doing it, except that he said that it was probably a byproduct of the struggles that he was going through with depression and everything. However, like Adam Morrison, he made $16 million in the NBA that he didn't spend much of. So he's pretty well off. He hasn't chosen a second career yet, but he did get married and he does have a child. And he did go back to Ohio State to finish his degree. So, and I think it's in sports management or something like that. So I think that he'll probably now, maybe he's turned a corner and he'll bounce back and have a productive rest of his life. Well, what were your thoughts on Greg Oden?
Yeah, he's one of those guys too, where it's like, kind of like the way that Derrick Rose, a lot of people are like, if only. Like, imagine Greg Oden, maybe a little older at that time, but Greg Oden paired with like Damian Lillard. Or Kevin Durant could have been paired with him too. Here are the top 5 in that draft: Greg Oden, Kevin Durant, Al Horford, Mike Conley, Jeff Green. So
good draft. Yeah.
That's a good draft.
Yeah.
I always, like it was one of those heartbreaking ones because it seemed like the injuries. And also like everyone was saying, kind of like you were saying, everyone said, get the big man, because getting a big man back in the mid 2000s was the easiest way to win a title. When you have guys like Shaq, it makes perfect sense. But then, like, if they had Kevin Durant, imagine Durant and Damian Lillard on the same team. Like they would dominate.
Yeah. Those Blazer teams were a little snake bitten because Brandon Roy was really good. And he probably could still be playing, but he also just the injuries just were crazy for him. All right. We're almost out of time, so I'll do this one real quick. A player you clearly remember, that's Tyler Hansball. Great college player. Did you know that he's the all-time leading points getter at North Carolina? With all of the great players, he scored over 2,800 points, and that's hard to believe, But he was a great college player, gritty. He was a National Player of the Year in 2008. They won the title in 2009. Wayne Ellington, ex-Knick and still playing in the NBA, was the MVP of the finals that year. But so he played 7 years. It's a little bit mixed bag, right? He played 7 years in the NBA, a lot of ups and downs. He had some, good stretches where he was a pretty productive player. But, for his position, I thought he was a little bit small because he tried to play power forward and he was getting, pushed around by guys, bigger and stronger than him. And in college, he was big and strong, compared to a lot of other players. In the NBA, for his position, he was kind of small. He bounced around a lot for those 7 years. Then he went to play in China, and he recently totally retired. And he's now a broadcaster for North Carolina games on the radio. So overall, again, he looks back on his college career, which, the accolades for him in his college career, if there was an award that you could win in college, he won it. and he had
Yeah.
just a phenomenal college career. So he looks back at that more than he does his NBA career, and he seems like he's pretty stable, pretty adjusted, ready to start his second life here, second career. What were some of your thoughts and memories on Tyler Hansbrough?
I always kind of felt Tyler Hansborough was a little overrated with his draft spot. And I'm looking at his like overall career numbers. The highest that he averaged was 11 points a game
Yeah,
with Indiana. So he's kind of
yeah,
here and there. Some of the guys drafted after him, he was 13th. Drew Holiday went 17th.
oh wow,
Ty Lawson went 18th. He was pretty good.
pretty
Jeff
good. Yeah,
Teague.
yeah, Jeff Teague was
Um,
good. Yeah,
Later on in that draft, our boy Taj Gibson was there too.
still playing, still
Um,
productive. Yeah, yeah,
and I mean, a lot of people missed on this guy, Danny Green.
yeah.
He went
Long
in the
Island.
second
Yeah,
round.
yeah.
So, I always felt like he was kind of just kind of there. Those North Carolina teams, though, were really unstoppable. Actually, to kind of circle back to today, you know that Roy Williams, 29-0 in the first round, lost his first ever first round game yesterday.
That's amazing. He's a great coach. He really is. Wow, that's amazing. It's hard to pinpoint a guy who did a great job in two places like he did. That's amazing.
Yeah. But I don't know. I guess it is good that he kind of seems like he's moved on pretty well with his career. And he should be very proud of his college career. Not many guys go 4 years like that anymore anyway, especially like his best year seemed like his junior year. He's like, I'll come back for another and won the title. So it is definitely interesting. And
Yeah.
and it seems like he would be a guy like he seems like he's a nice guy and a guy that would really be well connected to North Carolina. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the positive part. I mean, we forget during this time of year, and we'll wrap up. We'll forget this time of year that these are kids that are playing, and it's not an easy game even at that level, because it's a high level and you get to see all these good teams that you never saw all year. But we forget when Chris Webber called timeout, he's a 19-year-old kid, and everybody just killed him for it, but it doesn't always translate to success at that next level. But the key is there's so many more important things for life, your faith, your family. And it sounds like most of the guys that we read about have kind of shrugged that off there, and that they didn't, really play well in the NBA. And I like that a couple of them saved their money. You probably were thinking, this might not last for me, so they saved their money. All right, I'm going to ask you to take us home. I'll give this update. 45 seconds left. Loyola Chicago is going to win this. They're up by 10. So we got a number one seed going down. Amazing. And I like it. I liked Illinois when they had Darren Williams, Luther Head, and D Brown. Those were good teams. They never got over the hump. They lost to North Carolina as well in the championship game. They never got over the hump, but they were good. They were good. All right, Kenny. This has been fun. Hopefully, hopefully folks listen to this and this takes them back a little bit. So why don't you take us home?
All righty. Well, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny?
With Sports on the Positive Tip. Enjoy March Madness today. Hopefully more upsets happen.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks. Take care.